everybody for tuning in to Coder Conversations. Be sure to visit us at www.coderconvos.com. Today, we have Bethesda QA engineer Kyle Pagkatipunan. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
That was so good. You got that.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for
yeah.
coming
I
on,
feel like
man.
people.
We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. Like, I was really definitely excited to like come on because I. It's interesting. I feel like there's a lot of like misconceptions with QA and like what we do necessarily. So I think it might be interesting to kind of talk about that. And I feel like my background and how I got my job is pretty unique, but it kind of shows that like even if you don't have like a game development degree, you can still put your foot in. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, your background looks really interesting. It looks like you started from Best Buy, up to the Baltimore Ravens, and then ended with Bethesda. Would you mind like talking us through the progression of jobs?
yeah. So I actually started working at Best Buy as like a Geek Squad agent, so like helping a bunch of people with their like issues, stuff like that. Um, but there was a situation where I needed to kind of like drop out of school financially, but to like live essentially, I just started working full time at Geek Squad, and that was like really great. It was honestly like it's kind of embarrassing. That was my first like actual job. I worked in like food service, but only for like a month. But
How old were you when you were at Best Buy?
I 20 21. Yeah, 21.
Okay, that's pretty young.
Yeah. I actually recently turned 24 not so long ago.
Oh, nice.
Okay, yeah, you're young, man.
Yeah, I am definitely on the younger side. It's weird working with a bunch of people who are like a lot older than me, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet your team you have people that are a lot more senior.
yeah, definitely. It's definitely interesting. But so while I was working at Geek Squad, I don't know why I actually enjoyed that job, but I've always had an interest towards like video games, but more specifically, like writing narratives in video games because I feel like video games have a very unique like um quality that a lot of other storytelling mediums don't have, which is like the player able being able to like interact with the story and like control what's happening. There's um there's a quote in from this film reviewer, and it goes somewhere along the lines of like film is like a lens through a new perspective or something like that. And
I
I
like
feel like
that.
video games is definitely one of that, but is deeper than film because you're actually in it. It's especially with like
It's immersive.
yeah. I feel like there's a lot of potential of um creating like narratives where it has like a lot of meaning. It has like a social um meaning behind it. But yeah, it's been playing video games pretty much my entire life, and I I grew up in a household where my parents actually really hated that I played video games. It was like discouraged. I feel like it's stereotypical, but like my parents wanted me to like get like a very stable job, so they wanted me to go into the med field, and they wanted me to go into the tech field, which I like kind of did. I would say the video game industry is definitely in the tech field. Um, but yeah, I've just always like knew in the back of my head that I wanted to connotations in my family. I just couldn't even admit that I wanted to work in the video game industry. And so I like started adopting other hobbies, such as like filmmaking. Video. Wanted to uh, write a story that can really make an impact and can change someone's perspective in a way that can like bring change. Because I feel like with how difficult it is, um, how divisive our world is now, it's so hard to communicate to each other. And I feel like through art, that's how you can like change minds without like forcefully arguing with someone, you know? And
Yeah, I mean that's why I love music. I think it can, kind of like Bob Marley, like you can unite
yeah,
people from all over the world. It's pretty incredible.
exactly. It's like artists have such a huge like part of just bringing change. I mean, you mentioned Bob Marley. A lot of my like favorite or my role models are all in the video game industry. But like
Oh wow.
it's it's kind of weird because I feel like not many people really know about many of the game directors or writers who are in the game industry, but I've always looked up to them growing up. And I feel like this is super cliched, uh but what really triggered my fascination in video games um was when I played The Last of Us. Uh I was like one of the only kids uh at school with a PlayStation 3, and I was like super hyped for it. And I don't know if you guys are like too familiar with it, with the game or
Yeah.
not. Yeah. It
Is that
was
it's a zombie game?
yeah. It's like
Okay, I played it. Yeah, I played it before.
mhm, yeah. That was probably, I don't know what it was about that game, but it just changed how I looked at video games and how you can really view them as art. And that was kind of awkward to say to other people when I was in like sixth grade. Yeah, I was in sixth grade when it came out. That's fucking shit. Wait, am I allowed to curse?
Or we try to keep the cursing off because just
Okay.
kids might be listening.
Yeah. Um, yeah, just the story of the characters and is what makes The Last of Us what it is. Like, sure, it's like you can call it like, oh, it's a zombie game. There's like a million of those. But it's like a zombie game that's not really about the zombies. It's a lot more of like human nature and just like how people think, or how love can be represented in different forms. Like love can be beautiful, it can be amazing, it can be something that can allow you to grow, but sometimes love can be like vicious, like if you're
It can be
heartbroken.
terrifying. Yeah, it can be
Yeah.
terrifying.
Or if you're a parent, it's like I love my kids so much that I would literally do anything for them. It's interesting. But yeah, that's I just wanted to create something that just had that impact on me. So I would always start like writing stories. I got into script writing pretty early on, which was definitely good for me, because I was kind of a terrible writer when I was younger. Um, but it definitely helped like hone in on my abilities.
What got you into writing?
Uh, I- I've I think at first, like I mainly just wanted to like express myself because I was a pretty shy kid. Um, I struggled a bit like through my mental health. Kind of growing up, I grew up as a I'm the first generation um of my family who's living in the US. And the cultural differences from my parents and me living here in the US is just so starkly different.
It
Um
must be drastic. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So it's it was always like a challenge trying to like be like a kid in America when like being a kid from the Philippines, which is where my family's from, is completely different. But I had all of these like emotions and all these thoughts like piled all inside of me that writing was my outlet. Um, but I don't. It was like really The Last of Us that really made me like actually take the extra step to actually pursue it and be like, okay, I want to actually write and like direct stories. And at the time, I because my parents and my family had such a negative connotation towards video games, I just used the excuse of me wanting to become a filmmaker. Um, and I thought, hey, maybe if I'm like in the film industry, maybe I can just like slowly adapt and slide into the video game industry because I had no idea as a kid like how I could even get there. Um, so that was like my main thing, and I started coding. And it's weird, like I started coding and like filmmaking. I feel like that's like a those two together are either animation or video games itself. But
Right.
it took me so long to like actually realize, like, oh yeah, I want to work in the video game industry. It's funny, like during COVID, I feel like everyone was struggling through that. That was a mess. Uh, I didn't even have like a full yeah, I didn't have a full freshman year because of COVID. But
Yeah,
anyways,
I was doing programming boot camp,
mm,
and I think it went through COVID. And then I was like, wow, this is, getting out of the boot camp and then applying for jobs. It was brutal.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's so hard to get a job right now. I have a lot of friends who like recently graduated with like pretty like great degrees, but they're struggling to find a job, and I don't know. It's kind of sad, but and I feel fortunate enough to be to have my job, even though there's a lot of issues in the video game industry um, that I would love to share as I finish my background.
We would, no, we'd love to hear it, man.
Yeah, but yeah, through high school, that's when I really wanted to get into acting as well. So acting, um, film, coding, it all kind of meshed together. Where once I was finally about accepted at the University of Baltimore um, County, UMBC, I wanted to double major as a comp sci um, major and a filmmaking major. So I thought I could like handle both of it, but I mean, you've been in a programming boot camp. It's like it can be absolutely brutal. Um,
Intense, yeah. It's definitely intense.
yeah, yeah, especially like deadlines and stuff like that. So I was just balancing that, and
Well, it's
I
funny you say deadlines because I almost got kicked out of the school because we had certain times when we had to submit projects by, and I
oh,
thought that I had way more time than I really did. And they're like, "Oh no, like you were supposed to submit that project like weeks ago." And I'm like, "Oh well, I had no idea. I was taking notes." And the instructor was like, you just gotta like skip through that stuff and get to the project. He's like, the projects are what really matter here, not all
yeah.
the text, all the dialogue about Java. He's like, not that it's not important, but he said you're never gonna memorize that stuff, so don't bother
Hmm.
writing it down. Just skip ahead to the applications.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, I'll be honest, like I don't I don't mean to roast like a bunch of like comp sci professors or teachers, but it's like such a hard subject to teach. I I can't even like fathom. It's I've never had like a good comp sci teacher where I was able to like actually understand it. I've always needed to like learn everything by myself, just studying. And I know a lot of my friends who struggled with coding. They were trying to rely on the lectures and some of the assignments we did in class, and they didn't really get that far. Um, but what's interesting, you mentioned that you were worried that you were going to get kicked out. I actually got kicked out from pursuing um, my comp sci degree, and that was like kind of one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever experienced because especially since COVID started around this time and so much has happened within such a small time frame. I felt like what I wanted to do my entire life was just completely gone. Um, I had no idea what to do at that point, and
That same way that you were feeling.
mhm, yeah, and that's something that I've been like realizing just like talking to like my coworkers and stuff. It's pandemic was rough, just absolutely brutal because like it was something that you could never have predicted. Um, like sometimes I would like to wish or like to think about like what it would be like if that never happened, but I mean it did happen, so there's like no point in even doing so. Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean, like for me, I'd probably still be working in programming.
yeah, isn't that like crazy? Like I don't even know if I'll be working at Bethesda um if the pandemic didn't happen. In a weird way, like I feel like I learned a lot. Um but yeah, I guess you learn a lot when you like kind of reach rock bottom.
Well, that too, and like you said, COVID, you're
Hmm.
isolated. You're just, there with you in the code, and it's an opportunity to dive into things.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I tried music. That's not my forte. Never again.
Music's tough, man.
Yeah, I'm so
Let me
bad.
tell you, music is really tough. I've been doing it since I was 14 years old, all over the map. You have a great experience and then a terrible experience, and then another great experience, and then a mediocre experience. And
Mhm.
you have to get used to that's just kind of part of the trade of music.
Yeah, definitely like when you're starting out, especially. I was able I experienced that a lot when I was pursuing film after I got kicked out of my comp sci degree. Um trying to make your start in the film industry is so hard. I mean, as you probably know in the music industry, like it's just even now, like I don't even know how like where to go or how to like proceed other than like finding connections that could help progress you, but like those don't really come around that often. Um because like I was doing well in with my film degree. I was actually going to graduate with my film degree. Um and I would finish my assignments early because it was just that was like the only thing that I really focused on at that point. It was like that in video games essentially, which sounds kind of depressing. Um but uh I my professor, my film professor started like handing me out like local like film crew jobs. And it was COVID, not I started kind of I think it was maybe 2021, 2022. I spent like an entire semester just going up and down the East Coast just taking jobs. Just as like a PA, not really anything massive, but that was awful. I gas, especially then, was insane. And although I would make like kind of a pretty good deal of money by the end of a shoot, it just wasn't worth the amount of driving and the living expenses that I needed to just do. Um,
Now
and
you
that's
said PA. Is that
oh
production assistant?
yeah, yeah, production assistant.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify for our listeners. Production
Mhm.
assistant. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's a hard job. It's a hard industry, and it you kind of need to start at the bottom in the film industry. Like even if you have like experience with your own stuff, you don't have experience in like professionally. You made your own stuff, but that's not gonna like cut it. So that whole experience just also kind of crushed my dreams. um because I started to realize like I don't know if I can survive in the film industry because this is I was so unhappy. I was freaking out about like my expenses and stuff like that. I was never home. It was it was a lot. I thought I had the drive to do it, but n- I don't know. I reached a breaking point where I just needed to stop. And it was around then where I took a gap year. And that's when I kind of ran into like financial issues where I needed to take like drop out of school for a bit in order to like sustain myself. Um,
Right.
and that's when I actually got the Geek Squad job. So
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah. And I thought that was a good I mean, I wanted to work at Geek Squad. I'll be completely honest. Mainly so I can get like a PlayStation 5 saved for me because this was around the time when like PlayStation 5s were like almost impossible to get. So
Right, I
I
remember
applied
that.
to a bunch of like retail places like Target, Best Buy, of course. I got rejected by Target. I'm so upset by that. God, apparently it's hard to get hired at Target. That's like crazy. Um, but yeah, working at Geek Squad, I thought that after film and after like coding, I thought maybe IT or IS, information's technology or information systems would be like more of my thing. So that's kind of like why I uh wanted to become like a Geek Squad agent so I can kind of get like experience helping people with their electronics or anything any issues that someone might run into, because so many programs nowadays just have so many bugs. It's kind of infuriating. And because of that, I felt like I felt like I wanted my friend Griffin. He actually has a hockey podcast. He he gave me a link to um a job opening at Bethesda Games, and he was like, "Hey, I know you wanted to like work here. Um, you should apply." So I just like applied, not really expecting anything because like I don't have a degree. I dropped out of school essentially, and I'm working at Geek Squad. Like I I'm just gonna throw these like applications out there. And I wasn't expecting anything. And it's so weird how it worked out. But when I was like really struggling making ends meet, um, I I finally got accepted. I got the Ravens job, right? So I was working the Geek
Right.
Squad job and the
Right.
Ravens.
Awesome.
And on top of that, like a few weeks after I got the Ravens job, I got an email from the HR department in Bethesda. So it was like all of these like job opportunities all just came to me all at once. It's just such a weird.
Isn't it funny how that happens sometimes? Just it's like
Yeah.
the floodgates just open and there you are.
Yeah, I was like, could it, I honestly wish that it did it sooner, but because dude, I was suffering. Whole I that was rough. I was living in Baltimore and I could barely even like live there. Um I was in like debt and all that. It was rough, but I guess I needed to be humbled a bit. Um so maybe it was a good thing, who knows. But yeah, that's honestly how I got like my Bethesda job. They asked for an interview, and to be honest, I feel like the interview was the main thing that got me hired. Um because I just had this passion towards video games and how much it has an effect, how much it really changed my life. Like now, right now, even now, like I'm embarrassed to say this, but like I would say The Last of Us changed my life. Like I'm currently cringing just from saying that because I just feel like that's such like a that sounds so insane, but just experiencing that game, it really made me push myself towards something that my parents were like very concerned about, because they wanted me to just go through like the normal path or whatever, but I just wanted to do my own thing. But I knew that like if I try to pursue my own thing, I would be a lot happier, and to be honest, that was
Yeah,
probably
and
the best decision I've made.
a lot of parents are like that. I know my parents are like, oh, you should go to college right out of high school. I took a
Yeah.
gap year. I worked, remotely doing health insurance, just to pay the
Mhm.
bills. And then I finally felt so much pressure from, peer pressure from my peers, pressure
Mhm.
from my parents. I finally went to college for, I think about 2 years. I was just taking general classes,
Mhm.
psychology, philosophy, just like stuff that I had some interest in. And it just wasn't a good fit. And then I ended up moving across the country with a band at age 22.
Dang, that's crazy. It's I don't know if you kind of experienced the same thing, but I on LinkedIn, it's very common for someone to like send me a message and they're always like, "Oh, how did you get into Bethesda? What did you do in your application process? What did you do?" But like, I honestly have no idea how I got hired because these people that are asking me these things all studied and have degrees, but I had no plan whatsoever. But I guess just by trying to survive, everything worked together. There wasn't like a specific path, and that's just something like I live by now. And I'm wondering if that's like kind of how you felt, where everything was just so confusing until you just found a path.
Yeah, like I said, there was a lot of pressure from my parents to get like, a regular job or study a degree where you could, make something of yourself. Not that they didn't,
Mhm.
support my music because, my dad would, before I had my license, my dad would drive us to shows and wait for us at the show. So like I did have a very supportive family in that regard, but they always wanted me to have, like my mom would always say, "What's your backup plan? What's your backup plan?" And I would get so angry. I'd say, "You can't, if you want to succeed in music or arts, you can't have a backup plan. You have to go all in," which is what I did. I went all in and it didn't end up working out. But now I'm back doing music again. So it's like you never know. One thing me and Kevin talk about often, you never know when God's going to open a door and shut
Mhm.
another door. These things just happen.
Yeah, it's so wild because once I kind of had that realization, and I didn't have these expectations of what I was supposed to do, um, it wasn't only just like freeing, it was things just naturally just came to me. Because I feel like if you try to like pursue something, I don't know. Every time I try pursuing something, I hear nothing. But when I give up on it, somehow I get like an opportunity for it. That's how I got the Bethesda job. Like I didn't know I was gonna get an email back. But yeah, it's like it's it's something that I always like wondered with my parents, but I understand like why they did what they did because they just want me to have like the best life I can. Especially since they grew up in a foreign country and it's also a third world country. They didn't want me to like experience anything like that. I mean, that's the main reason why they came to America, to ensure that their kids could have a better future. So having that like expectation to that of my plan of my life being planned out, like I need to go to college, I knew this, I knew that, that was always intimidating. But honestly, I feel like you just need to let that go and just let things happen. If you move towards it and you try your best at anything, something will come. Um, and it has happened like more than once. So I just honestly just don't even try to think about it.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. But I also find really interesting is the stigma that video games are getting when, like if you watch movies all day, they won't call you a loser. But if you play video games all day, oh, that's loser behavior. But really, video games is at the forefront of pushing technology forward. A lot of the AI stuff, NVIDIA started as a company that manufactured graphics cards and, all this AI stuff. A lot of it's coming from video games, so it's crazy the stigma that such a transformative medium is getting.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you mentioned that. Like it's hard to think now because I feel like the video game industry has gotten so big where I feel like if you just mention that you play video games, like people don't really think you're a loser or anything. They're just like, "Oh, you just play video games?" It's like the same thing as, oh, you watch TV like nowadays, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And I remember when The Last of Us came out, I mentioned I was the only PlayStation 3 kid. So I was just fucking like amazed and starstruck by this game, and like the acting, the performances, the message behind so many parts of the story, the themes. I wanted to like show people that. I showed my mom. I will give her that. My mom loved it. Uh, that's honestly one of the best like bonding moments I've ever had with my mom. She's great. I've watched so many things with her.
That's awesome.
But yeah, she's honestly was very supportive through a lot of it. She wanted me to go through school, but also was very nurturing to my like creative aspirations, I guess. But because video games weren't cool back then, every time I tried to show it to someone, everyone was like, this is like a stupid zombie game. I don't want to like, this is dumb. I don't want to play this. I don't want to watch you. The story is kind of interesting. Meanwhile, like, I'm trying to think, when did the Last of Us TV show? I was it like 2022, 2023? Somewhere around then. And now like everyone loves it. And it's so fascinating just seeing a video game actually be adapted into film properly. But it's for people to look at something like the Last of Us TV show and say like, oh my god, this was based off of a video game from 2013. Like, what?
Right. It's like, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah. And it's you mentioned I've had instances where people that I've known through my childhood, through like elementary school, middle school, high school, they've known me because I liked video games or film, and I would talk about The Last of Us. I was like one of those annoying kids, I guess. But like a few people messaged me and were like, they finally like understood what I was talking about when they like watched the show, and it was just like really awesome for people to kind of recognize video games in that light. But and that it's crazy how much video games have like progressed and grown as a whole. I don't know. I just think about it sometimes. It just baffles me.
Yeah, I mean, I started off, during the Nintendo, little bit of Atari, but mostly Nintendo, and it's just a completely different medium now. It's almost like an interactive movie.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's just and you also mentioned like now since like video games are what push technology forward now. It's crazy how encompassing all of it is. But yeah. It's man.
And then, look at a game like Assassin's Creed or Uncharted. These are like tech in terms of the graphics. These are incredible graphic games.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's when I show my parents like video games nowadays, they literally think it's like actual. They think it's a film. I showed them the Indiana Jones video game that I was working on, and they literally thought it was the movie. Something that's also was a really cool thing about that game is the first like 10 to 15 minutes is the first 10 to 15 minutes of Raiders of the Lost Ark, just all recreated but in video game form.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and you're like walking through the set and everything. You're like moving your hands to like move spider webs away from your face. It's just insane. There's a lot of comparisons between the movie and the game, and it's funny looking at the comments where people are like, "Why does the game look better than like the film? This doesn't make any sense." um, but yeah, my parents were completely fooled by it. It's just crazy how much video games have evolved, and yeah, just it's great. But I feel like with early like industries, especially in the entertainment industry, when they're so young, it's it's very easy for it's very easy to kind of take advantage of um people in the video game industries like passion towards video games with like low pay or like
Yep.
not giving benefits or anything. And it's like it's absolutely brutal. Like earlier this year, I think 11,000 Microsoft workers from Xbox, they were just let go. Like they didn't even know. And I was like talking to a few of them. And they literally had no idea that they were let go until they sat down, pull up the computer, opened like Windows Chrome or Google Chrome or whatever, and saw on the news, Xbox let go all these people, and they needed to check their email, and that's honestly how they found out that they were let go, not from like the company, but because of looking at it in the media, which is just kind of baffling.
Wow, that's awful.
Yeah, and something that I've been really excited for is the Bethesda QA department have started a union, and I'll be honest, before the union was there, I was living with my parents because I was like horrified that I wouldn't be able to like afford a place to live because we would get let go without any warning, and we won't even get severance.
Wow.
And yeah, and like a lot of these people who also are working in QA, they're parents. They need to support their kids. Something that's like crazy that's happening now is that some companies are trying to bring back all their workers to work on site, but working remotely has really helped a lot of people to work at their jobs because living near game companies, it's so expensive just getting even renting a place. It's just not reasonable, especially with how much they pay us, which is so unfortunate. Um, uh, it wasn't even that long ago. Maybe like 2 years and a half where QA testers were only earning $15 an hour,
Wow.
and it's stuff like that where video game companies and execs use to take advantage of a lot of people who just want to make great video games.
Yeah, you know that company 2K games?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to know someone who was a tester for them, and he said, "Yeah, the pay's bad, but you know, it's a cool job."
Yeah. Exactly. And another thing, like with the video game industry, it's once you get your foot in the door, that's like it would be a lot easier for people to hire you, like other game companies to hire you because you have experience. Um,
Oh yeah, that's like, and
so
even in tech, even in the
yeah,
tech industry, that's like the gold standard. Oh, do you have
mm,
experience working at a company? Like for me to get my first programming job, I finally realized, okay, I'm gonna have to intern. I'm gonna need to do an internship to get professional experience to then get a job working in the industry. And that's really how it went. I was applying, interviewing, just not getting very far. And then finally
Mhm.
realizing, all right, a lot of these companies, they're looking for internships, they're looking for professional experience. So I kind of just had to bite the bullet and do it.
yeah, it's it's so brutal. uh,
Yeah, what's
it's
crazy is it pays a lot less than a comparative job in normal tech, like QA and regular tech. It can make maybe like 75 to even six figures, once they become like QA lead or whatever. But the video game industry does seem like more predatory and the hours are insane.
yeah, 100%. Like it's kind of it's insane because like a lot of my coworkers who have been in the gaming industry a lot longer than me, they tell me of like how much worse it was, and just the fact that it was worse is kind of insane. Um, because they in the video game industry now, because of a lot of game devs getting like exposed for extreme crunch, um, that's like crunch is like a bad. They don't want. That's like a bad word. Like you can't even say that in the office. um, where they give you like voluntary overtime now rather than like mandatory, which is like nice. It's great, but like since they kind of like take advantage and pay us very little, it's working overtime is kind of necessity just to make sure that we have some sort of safety blanket, um just to live, more so for like QA testers who have like kids and stuff. I've there's so many stories that I've heard within the gaming industry that it kind of disillusioned me for a while, and it it's really it's really difficult to realize like how disposable you are, um to the company. It's heartbreaking because it's like even if you do the hard, like if you work hard and you make like a massive contribution to the company, you can just get let go. It's just like that.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the downside to living in a capitalist country.
Hmm.
Capitalism. It's different than we were talking to someone who worked over in Japan the other night, and they're saying how, over there, they hire you and promote you based on how long you've been there. And,
Mm.
they'll never fire you, he was saying, in Japan. They'll just,
Yeah.
if they want to get rid of you, they'll try to give you like really bad work so you'll quit. But he said
Hmm.
they won't actually fire you. So he said, in the US, it's much more capitalism. So it's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, we'll cut 1,000 jobs, no problem.
Yeah, it's so rough. Because of just like how unstable it is just being in the video game industry. Um, Forming a union was horrifying. Um, because if they were able to just like let us go that easy, if we even say anything remotely like inferring a union, we would be let go on the spot. There's like no way. Um, Especially now that like most people work from home in the video game industry, it's like they could see your communication on your work computers, and if you mention anything like that, that's gonna be really bad. Um, and in January 2023, uh, the Bethesda QA team actually formed a union, which was a huge thing because not I we're among that union is among one of the first to be established in the video game industry, which is kind of insane, but also sad that it's taken this long just for like a union to start, just to like protect developers. It's it's baffling.
It's kind of sad. Yeah.
Yeah. And because like no one really, everyone was scared to do it. And something that I kind of, something that I tell people and they find it absolutely insane. So I work at Bethesda, right? There's like a weird loophole where I'm still considered a contractor. So I don't receive any benefits and I get paid less than my other coworkers, which is like not their fault. It's just that's just how it works. I just get paid less and I don't receive like benefits. And I'm not the only one who has that position. And it's not even like a matter of like, oh, maybe you're at that position because you don't do enough work. A lot of these people manage some of the full timers, like the people that are actually hired in the company. But it's such a weird like loophole that I just my it's just insane. I just don't even understand how like predatory, how they could just like do that. And what's horrifying now that like uh QA companies or QA departments are unionizing, they were trying to outsource the QA uh at the company from other countries that are working under a lot worse conditions, who get paid a lot less than us, um, just to make sure that they can get a QA team that they can take advantage of. But it's like overseas, so it's not like too much of a big issue. It's crazy.
That's
And
terrible.
yeah, it's something that can only a union's the only thing that could like support like the workers, like QA testers especially, because a lot of people like have the perception that being a QA tester is just like playing video games and like, you know, catching the occasional bug. Since I work at Bethesda, it's like 10,000 bugs a day, you know, just typical stuff like that. But
Right.
God, I love this company. It's great. The company that I work at but don't. Like it doesn't make any sense. um and like it's what was kind of wild is we needed to form two unions in order to protect all of the QA department, because since like I'm considered a contractor and so are a bunch of my other coworkers are contractors, um we don't technically work for Bethesda, even though we all have our own desks in their office. Like, we have the option to sit and work in the office. It's not like we're working at some other company or whatever. We're sitting next to actual like QA testers that we all work with. So there's like no difference between us and them. But because the union only protected full timers, contractors like me weren't protected, and that was absolutely horrifying.
That sounds shady.
Yeah, it's just it's this isn't like an exclusive thing. Just with like Bethesda, and man, it's so shitty, and that's the reason why like I have a group of like coworkers. We're very close because we went through it. We went through like so much, just fear of being let go at any second. Where we would purposely try to like burn ourselves out to show how valuable we are as a means to show that like please don't let us go, please. And I've
It's like begging.
exactly, it's like, why are we begging, but we're also begging for pay that's shit.
Right.
It's like, please give me just a small like
Interesting.
portion. And
It's an interesting situation.
Yeah. It is hard to get into the gaming industry. Even if you have like a game development degree, it's hard. So yeah. I'm trying to think about when this was, but CWA is a company that actually helped unionize the QA department at Bethesda. CWA stands for Communications Workers of America's Union. But pretty much they provide like lawyers and people to actually like advocate for us, and that was something that gave us hope that maybe if we had support like that would help. And me and my group of friends who are coworkers, we would all talk about how shitty the job was outside of work hours or outside the work computer. And a lot of us was struggling. I'm not going to use the actual names just for the sake of privacy, but Emily, not the real name, has a kid and did have a had a well-paying government job, but she hated it. So she applied to other jobs. She always wanted to be in the video game industry. So as soon as she got like an interview and they hired her, like she was ready to quit her job working for the government. Like, so she had like a bunch of benefits and everything, and she was passionate towards video games, and that's why she quit from her government job. But with how little they pay us, Emily is like working 3 jobs right now. I remember before Starfield came out, this was like maybe a few weeks ago. a few weeks before the launch of Starfield, which was September 6th, I believe, 2023. Yeah. Um yeah, she was working 3 jobs, and the last, oh god. It kind of like fucks me up, like, thinking about it. Uh because just my the people that I work with are they work so fucking hard. Like, Emily works 3 jobs just to like support her son. It's it's a lot. And
That's wild, man.
yeah. And it's so heartbreaking. And so as we were working like a month before Starfield came out, we all, like, the office was dead quiet. All our, like, we communicate on Slack. Um so all the Slack channels were completely silent in QA, because everyone knew that, oh, because Starfield is about to be released, are we just gonna be all let go? Like, are we working here? Like, do we need to prepare? Like, what is happening? And we would all ask, like, oh, can we find out when our contracts end? And people at Bethesda or ZeniMax would say, oh, yeah, so we don't actually have that information. You need to talk to your contractor company. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. When I asked the actual company that I work for, they tell me the same thing, that I need to ask Bethesda. So it's just like, who is telling the truth? Because obviously someone knows, but they just don't want to take like accountability for it.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
that reminds me of a current situation with all these drones that are in. I'm in New York. All these drones are in New Jersey.
oh
And,
my god,
the
yeah.
government saying, oh, there's nothing nefarious, there's nothing troubling or nothing dangerous about these drones. Yeah, how the hell do they know? Right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, I don't know. I would shit on the government so much, but I have friends who work in the government. I mean, I love the government. Don't we love it. Fuck. But yeah, it's frustrating, no, like, not being able trust um to trust the people who are supposed to like advocate for us at work. Um and yeah, I would love to like tell more. I feel like I felt like I went through like so many different tangents.
Oh yeah, man. We can definitely get into more of these stories, and there's so much other things to explore. I know we're getting kind of at the top of the hour. Yeah, did you just
Yeah.
want to leave any closing thoughts and kind of wrap everything up, and then we'll do a part two, a little bit later.
Yeah. I would say there's a lot of things wrong with the video game industry right now, and I feel like a lot of just players are starting to recognize it because of the quality of games coming out. Um and it's where the conditions that like us developers experience, it's just there's such a huge story behind that I can finally talk about because I'm part of the union. You know, I'm protected. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to like talk about like how they treat us, because they can just like let me go. But yeah, I would be so happy to kind of talk about like what it's like, kind of. But yeah, I mean, it is getting better, but it's still absolute shit.
Man, that's crazy, and we'll definitely dive into more of those stories on part 2, man. But yeah, we definitely appreciate you for telling us what you have so far.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, it was a pleasure. But yeah, we gotta wrap this one up. So we'd like to thank you for showing up, and we'd like to also thank everybody for tuning in. But we'll catch